Cascade Union is the main layout of the Sydney N-Scale Model Railway Club. It occupies 2 rooms in Rockdale and has been designed as a triple level layout with lots of scenery. Construction started in October 19 in the South Room. By December 2019, nearly all the benchwork in the South Room had been completed, and in January 2020, track laying started. By December of that year, all the track in the South Room had been laid and was operational. A year later, the track had also been built on the helix up to the mid-level, and the initial benchwork for the mid-level had been installed. By December 2022, all the mainline track and the main yard in the South Room had been installed and was operational. Construction started in the North Room in August of 2020, and by December of that year, the majority of the benchwork had also been constructed. Track laying was very quick, and by January of 2021, the golden spike was driven and the main line, the lower level, operated around the whole layout in both rooms. By December 21, all the main scenery had been installed in the North Room as it had in the South Room. And by December 2022, most of the benchwork for the mid-level had been installed, constructed and installed, and another helix, the North Helix, had been constructed. Let's look at the construction of some of the scenic areas of the layout. The first was Connaught Tunnel. This was one of the first pieces of benchwork built and was also the first section of the layout to be fully scenic. The next section is Black River. Black River is in a small alcove off the South Room, And whilst construction started back in 2019, it wasn't until June 2021 before the scenery started. Part of the reason for this was the fact that we needed this middle level to be available, to be incorporated into the scenery. As at the end of the alcove, the scenery is combined to show both levels as one scene. Our next scenic area is Parker. Again, very early track work, very basic scenery added early in the piece. But it wasn't until 2021 before the scenery really started to be put in. And by December of 2021, the scenery was basically fully completed. The next scenic area is Fort McLeod, and it was one of the last areas to be developed in the North Room because it had originally had a temporary reversing loop, and then when we did the connection, it then needed to have the yard added. And as the yard was added, so the scenery was added. So it was a joint effort. But by the end of 2021, the majority of the scenery had been completed. The next scenic area is Rocky Creek Bridge. This bridge, when it was built, is 1.5 metres long. And the scenery was a real challenge to build to match the grandeur of the actual bridge. It took quite a while for that bridge to be built, or that scenery to be built. And it wasn't until November 21 when most of the basic scenery was done, but there were still bits added right through to June 2022. The next section is Morant's Curve. Again, the scenery started early in the exercise, February 21, and has been added and built over a year before it became something that we were actually pretty happy with. The next section is an area we call a track realignment. We've built a little story for this section. Originally, the line was a single track line running through mountains, steep grades. The railroad has built a new bypass, realigning the track, providing better grades, and are in the process of making it double track. However, at the present moment of operations, there is only one track operating. The other one is still being built. The next piece is Eureka. Eureka is the last town on the lower level, and again, it was one that took a while before we got around to doing the scenery on it. And then even that, it's taken some time. But hey, it's our layout and we can take our time. We like it. The next section is Seattle. This is actually the first town on our mid-level of the layout. And it's been built in a slightly different manner. It's a modular, so that by May we had track laid on the first module and took it off the whole layout so that we could then start wiring it. We then continued to lay track around other parts of the layout of Seattle, and then each module was taken off to be wired. And all were reinstalled in December 2022. Our next section is Kerr's Plains. Like other parts of the middle level, it's built in modular format so that we can wire it without problems. And we've only laid, at the present moment, the main line. We're playing around with buildings, trying to get a picture of how we want the yard to look. Our next section is Feltonville. And here you can even see it being built outside the club rooms before we mounted it on the wall. Again, just the main line has been partially entered. We can't do any more until we build the rest of the benchwork. Our next section is the North Helix. This will connect the lower level with the mid-level, and we've used a different technique to our other helix in using rods and nuts to make it much easier to build the helix and to get it up. Now all we need to do is connect it with the rest of the mid-level.